Hey, welcome to another episode of Jack Theology. Good to be back. Better than ever. A couple weeks off for various reasons. I was sick. The 2 weeks ago, I was so sick I couldn't open my left eye. This is my left eye.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I got on a Zoom call with somebody, and I'm like, yeah, probably shouldn't be on camera for anything.
Matt, you're always beautiful.
So, anyways, it's good to be back. Um, yeah, like, subscribe, share, all those things. We've had some good interaction over the last few episodes. It's been fun. Um, and we've had some interest. At least I really haven't talked. Well, I talked to Kevin about one special guest we might have on in the coming months, and then I had another one reach out. So we may have some more guests. I think that was fun. We should probably keep
Yeah,
doing
I
that.
actually I like that idea. As long as the
Yeah,
guests are worthy of
yeah,
being
yeah,
being on the same call with you, Matt, then I'm all
yeah.
for it.
um, yeah, I think part of it is just we haven't had many guests on because it's just pure laziness, or we get this, pretty busy.
We've
It's
had a lot
good
to
to,
talk about too. A lot to
yeah, that
cover.
too, that too, that too. So today we wanted to dive into kind of dealing with the turmoil. Where do you find God? How do you find God in the midst of turmoil? We could take this any direction. I mean, I think there's a lot of Christians out there, a lot of believers, a lot of people I'm friends with that are feeling a collective turmoil with what's going on in our culture.
Right.
Where is God? How do I connect with God? And um, feeling overwhelmed and stressed. And I think it's important in the midst of that that we do find rhythms to connect with the divine, to connect with ourselves, to go deeper, to do some, what they called it at my seminary is soul care. I think appropriate caring for your spiritual side, I think, is important. And that could go to anything in life because I know we all have other turmoils in life, like loss of job, loss of loved ones, loss, of whatever, dealing with all sorts of things in life that come our way. And so even in those times, I think it's important to have a rhythm. Um, I I've been on a diet. We've talked about that some, and I've been watching. Well, TikTok knows I'm on a diet, so they send me these videos, and
TikTok knows
this
everything.
one, yeah, that does. It's crazy. So this one video I was watching, this guy was talking about food being a drug, and typically we go to food when we are stressed, and I'm definitely that way. It's how I kind of feed my feelings, and I think I was thinking about that, and I was like, I think God wants us to come to Him first, when we're feeling emotional, when we're feeling that way, and I think we're gonna operate a lot healthier if we do stop and go to Him first, and take those issues and feelings to God. I think we'll be a lot healthier all the way around, both physically and mentally, and all of those things. So where do we go for God in turmoil? Um, any thoughts? I have
Food.
thoughts. Food.
I'm
Well,
right there. I'm right there with you. Whenever, I mean, I think we things are stressful right now. Turmoil is going on. I think everybody feels this sense of stress and pressure. Maybe not. Maybe if you're completely a fan of everything that's going on right now, um, and everything in your life as well is perfect. Maybe you're not feeling this turmoil, this sense of unease that's driving you to vices or unhealthy habits. And I think all of us have vices or unhealthy habits, especially ones that we go to whenever we are negatively impacted, triggered. We go to something that is comforting whenever everything else isn't comforting. Um, where should we go? Where do I go? What remind me what the question was, Matt? Who am I? Where am I? What are we doing here?
how do we go to God in turmoil when things are stressed in life? Um, yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Is where do we go? Kind of knowing our natural inclinations. Where's your outlets? I think God wants us to meet us in those outlets. So food's a great one, because I think Jesus kind of knew that we go to food in our outlets, and so He gave us a meal to remember him by. And there's this great quote um, that I can't who said it will come to me, but it's when in doubt, run to the Eucharist, run to the Lord's table. And so when you're stressed, it is good to eat. Go eat of the Lord's Supper. I know that for me, that's a great way in which I connect with God. Is sometimes I just find the closest Episcopal church that I know Episcopal churches will allow me to partake, and a lot of them have midweeks communion and Eucharist services, and so I'll go find one and go partake, and that's, I know, for me, really helpful to
Yeah.
enter into that
No,
rhythm.
I think you make a great point, especially I think bringing up food as a way to, face turmoil and renew, repair, reconnect in that spiritual connection with the divine. Because I think, I was thinking for me, food is a vice, but you pointed out the fact that food is also healing. Food is a spiritual discipline. Food is literally the thing that Jesus, as you said with the Eucharist, is a means of remembrance, and I think most people would say a means of grace in some way as well. There's some mysterious connection there, and so I think there's, as you were talking, I was thinking, and I don't know, maybe you want to comment on this, maybe you have a different perspective, maybe you completely disagree, but I don't know that our vices are necessarily bad or negative in and of themselves. A lot of things that we run to for comfort in moments of turmoil aren't necessarily bad or wrong in and of themselves. Um, Food, smoking, drinking, you know, I guess alone time or disconnectedness. I'm trying to think of what other vices, or things that we may run to are for some of us.
Well,
It's self care.
workaholism.
It's self
Yeah.
soothing. Well, going into work, I guess workaholism maybe is a negative side of that, but putting your hands towards something is not necessarily a bad thing
Yeah.
in seasons of turmoil. For a lot of people it's gardening. For a lot of people it is spending some extra time working on a project that takes their mind off of the thing that they're wanting to focus on. Self-care, self-soothing. For some people it's physical interaction, sex, one-on-one with themselves, with other people. It's going to that spouse or going to that partner, going to that other person, and utilizing that relational, intimate aspect in order to soothe and provide comfort. I don't know that necessarily the things that we utilize maybe as vices are in and of themselves morally or ethically wrong, but I guess maybe there becomes a line where you cross where it begins to um I guess be counterproductive to solving the turmoil that's within you. Because food, the table, also obviously you and I are both in a cutting phase because I may have soothed or comforted a little bit too much over the last few months.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like our wise professor said, everything in moderation, including moderation, right? I love that line. I think
I
God,
like that line too, actually. Everything in moderation, even moderation.
yeah, God created and saw it was good, and so created things are good. Food's good. Work is good. Some of those vices. I mean, Jesus drank wine. First miracle. All of those things are good, but when you overdo them, we know intuitively, and maybe we've probably experienced them not being good, right? We've eaten so much we felt sick. We've drank so much we felt sick. We've overworked ourselves where we get sick. Our body tends to tell us when we've gone too far, and so that's when it becomes a problem. And I think a lot of folks get sucked into, then it becomes a steamroll. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this because it makes me feel good in the moment. But God does want to meet us in all of those things. All of those things you mentioned, God wants to meet us in. And I think that's the beauty of God, is that He does meet us in those things we naturally go to. A good meal, um, with a bottle of wine is a good stress relief. With friends and family, right?
And a
Like,
whiskey and a
in
cigar afterward. That you're
yeah,
speaking about.
or
Like, keep going, keep painting
yeah,
this picture. I like this.
yeah, Yeah, a post meal bourbon and cigar, and in community can be a really uplifting and supportive thing, and it can really help us in the turmoil. We can vent, we can get things off our chest, we can bring God into the conversation. Those all can be great, awesome things. But what does the Apostle Paul tell us? Is like, at these things, don't get drunk on wine. Don't make that the thing. Make the community the thing. Make the people the thing. And the other things are just supplements to encourage those moments.
So whenever a vice or some sort of a comfort tool in order to soothe becomes, I guess, maybe self-focused in a way that it's in excess to the point of maybe becoming um, maybe creating turmoil or chaos in and of itself within us,
Yeah, it,
then it becomes counterproductive, I guess, is what you're saying.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I see it as. It kind of works against you. Like, you're going through this turmoil. Like, let's take this cultural moment we're in. Every day there's just something stressful that's coming out of Donald Trump's mouth,
Every day, I
and
wish it were every day. It's like
yeah,
every
I know.
half hour.
Every hour, yeah, and you're just overwhelmed. You're stressed. You're getting emotional, and then you add in all of that other stuff that's also not making you feel great, and it's going to distract from your sleep. It's going to distract from your overall health. You're likely not talking to God about it. Uh, it just snowballs, and then you react and do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. And then you're not helping the situation, because then more turmoil comes because you've created this chaos. And so I think, what is the Gospels, or I think Paul says, be sober minded. I don't think he was just talking about alcohol. I think in all things, like, keep your mind clear, and ready to bring, defense to the scriptures, to God and the way of God. And so I think we need to be careful there. Um, but yeah, no, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because, you know, drug, food is a drug, alcohol is a drug. Uh, doesn't mean you can't use those things. You just have to be
Methamphetamines is
careful.
a drug.
Yeah. Well, the chemical drugs, that's a uh, whole other conversation, but
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
yeah, yeah, no, those were on my back of my mind,
Yeah, well, I mean,
but
right? And a lot of folks are now using hallucinogenics and drugs in order to center and comfort, and so it's it is a real issue, I think, for us, in that we as a species, we as Americans here in the U.S., we as people in this time and culture, don't seem to be able to generally find a way to access comfort or peace. And I think it's easy for us to say, well, you go to church, you read your Bible, you double down on your relationship with Jesus, your spirituality, and you'll find peace. But you look around, and there are a lot of folks who are the most invested and committed to their faith, and they seem, by and large, from my perspective, to be the least peaceful people ever. And so I'm not sure that in and of itself is the full and total answer to what's going on here. In a lot of ways, everything's interconnected. Whenever other things in our life are out of balance or in turmoil, even though things in our spiritual world may not be in turmoil, I think it has an effect, on that. We're not divorced, from our spirituality, or from our spirit. Our physical is not. Everything is interconnected there, and I think a lot of us feel that probably right now, not just a disconnect in this, in the turmoil that's going around us, but also I think maybe a disconnectedness from our faith and from God during this season.
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think all things are connected. Um, Richard Rohr talks a lot about that, the connectedness, the oneness of all of creation, and we're interconnected. I think totally true. Um, and it's something not to ignore. Like, I think we humans, we learn to carry around more stress than we realize, and we don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I'm sure we all have, where you go on vacation and the first couple of days of vacation, it's so hard to disconnect, right? And then you finally disconnect, and you feel like anxiety about disconnecting. And then finally, if you take a week vacation,
The
normally
last
the
day.
last 2 days are like real vacation. You're really like restful and in it. And then you're back to it. So, uh, I'm always amazed at how stressed I am, even if I don't necessarily consciously think I'm stressed, when you do get away like that.
Yeah. Well, I think
Uh,
you make a good point in that we don't have any more margins in our lives. We have no seasons or abilities or opportunity to rest. A lot of people I know are going to go to. We're connected all the time. We're online all the time. We're on social media. We don't put down the phones. And I'm not saying that that isn't true. That we have no Sabbath from those things necessarily. But even I think without those things in our life, as you point out, there's still no margin or rest or Sabbath from our minds or from our hearts, and we've forgotten not only the importance, I think, of doing that, but how to do that. And our world, our communities, our families are not wired really for that um, anymore. And
mm.
I don't know. I have a great answer for how to get that back.
Yeah, I think for some, you have to look at it as very practical. Rest is so important to our bodies. I mean, you know this you've been in the bodybuilding world. Is number one way to build muscle is to sleep,
The only time
right?
the muscle, when you're
Yeah.
doing nothing, when you're sitting, it's in those rest days. People who work out 5, 7 days a week, you're not
um,
helping.
yeah, yeah. It's
You're
the
not growing.
rest. And no, and I don't know. I got this new Apple Watch for Christmas, and it has all these
Ooh,
tracking
fancy.
apps. Yeah, and I've been tracking my sleep, and it's so amazing to me.
You wear your watch in the sleep.
Yeah, I want to know. I get nerdy. I'm nerding out on it,
That's all
and
right. No,
what
that's
I've
all right. I was going to make a comment about that technology even being with you in bed and in sleep, but so
yeah.
you're using it. So yeah. So what happened when you were
Well,
tracking your sleep? What did you notice?
I noticed that if I get a good sleep, like 7.5 to 8 hours, and it's restful, like I haven't been drinking before I went to sleep or anything like that. I wind down properly. I found that you have to even winding down properly gives you a better sleep. Um, and then my heart rate in my workouts, I notice such a difference. And I mean, how I work out, the high intensity stuff. So your heart rate can get jacked. And the days that I sleep well, my heart rate stays lower
Hmm.
consistently, and I'm able to go faster and do more in the workout. Days I don't sleep well, I notice a distinct difference. My heart rate redlines a lot quicker. I have a harder time, and so I just through that data, and there's all sorts of research out there that the more you sleep, the better you sleep, the higher more energy you're going to have, and all those things, the better workouts you're going to get. So it's built into our system to rest that we can work better if we are rested. And God designed us and created us that way. Like on the seventh day, he rested. A whole day of the created order is about rest. God gives it as a command to rest. Like we are commanded as humans to rest. I mean, to me, that's like a beautiful thing. Like, hey, one law here, you should not do anything. You should chill out. Um, And so, yet we tend to ignore that, even though we're always like, man, I wish I had a day just to myself, just off. Uh, and so, yeah, I think that is a way we enter into the presence of God during turmoil is be very disciplined and set boundaries around rest. And you could do it. I mean, we all could do it. We could turn off our phones, or just ignore those calls, or um, get away, just take a drive out. Now that it's getting nicer out, take a drive out and just get away for the day somewhere. So there's lots of ways in which you could do it. Um,
So put boundaries, put boundaries around the turmoil that may begin as being, sieves, that still allow
yeah,
some of that turmoil through, but you're beginning to create rhythms and patterns um, in order to try to at least control some of it, if not all of it. as I was thinking there at the end, as we were talking through some of those examples, uh, maybe you need to find a new vice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Find
That's good.
something, that is a
Yeah, that's good.
distraction, that is something that you can be passionate about in order to be a strong enough draw to pull you away from that turmoil and to pull you away from that chaos and that lack of disconnectedness. Why is that thing compelling? Well, there's a dopamine hit there, right? I mean, there's a response, that becomes a need, within you, both, well, I need to make my boss happy. I need to be there for my family. I need to make sure that whatever happens on the electronic device, that I'm there for what happens if somebody needs me or something goes wrong. So there's like this dopamine hit, not just from, scrolling social media, but from all of these things that are creating chaos in our life. And you're going to have to find something that gives a stronger or more compelling dopamine hit in order to drag you away from those other things.
Well, that's good too, and I think part of it um, is also learning and creating discipline to move on from those thoughts, right? Like, so
Yeah.
when we have a stressful thing going on, we go into the doom loop. I always call it the doom loop. You just go down and down and down, and it gets worse. You make it probably worse than it actually is in your brain. And when you have something else to do, like gardening or weightlifting or, fill in the blank, enjoying a wine tasting or a bourbon tasting, cigar taste, whatever, fill in the blank, it allows your mind, all right, I see it, and now I'm doing this thing. I'm moving on from it, rather than playing the movie in your head over and over and over again.
Right.
I think is an important skill to mental health, to clearing the soul out. And then I think even in prayer, I've encouraged our congregation. And this kind of goes to what you do is to take those things to God, like practically in prayer, and sit down and let your mind flood with those thoughts, because Jesus says, right, he says, take my yoke upon you, let me take your yoke, your heavy burdens, lay them at my feet. And so in prayer, I've been encouraging folks to like physically do that, like sit down, let those thoughts enter, and then in your mind move them over to Jesus, allow Jesus to take them, and then be done with the thought and give that to Jesus in prayer. Let the next one come, right?
I like that. I like
um
that visualization,
yeah.
of like in your mind, like visualizing doing that. I like that.
Yeah, visualize it, passing it over. And I think it's been helpful for me to do that. I think, as I've encouraged folks, I think it's been helpful for others. And some people are scared to do that, to quiet the heart enough to let those thoughts come in. It can be a traumatic experience. And, um, but then it goes back to the community, right, aspect, that having someone in your life that you can walk alongside, that can walk alongside you in the midst of that. So if it becomes too difficult to bring in your mind like that, to bring it to a friend, to just talk about it out loud, uh, and for support. I know, Kevin and I have been there for each other on those moments, and it's been helpful. Something I don't want to deal with on my own. It's nice to have somebody you can talk to. So, um, yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that there is, and you've said this several times. I think there's a very compelling need for this to be done in community. Because one of the things that I was thinking whenever you were talking before, whenever we were talking about, finding something else to do, something that's another dopamine hit or that's a passion or getting out of doing something, is, for a lot of us, we think that whenever we are trying to Sabbath or trying to rest, most of us try to be alone,
Mm.
disconnect from everything, get a book or whatever, just sit and do nothing. And for a lot of us, that is really scary, as you said, but also really kind of counterproductive to actually succeeding in doing that. Maybe you do need to disconnect from everything. Maybe you do need to spend some time alone because you're always in community and you're an introvert and you recharge alone. But for most of us, I think probably whenever we're trying to remove ourselves from turmoil and chaos and feeling overwhelmed, disconnecting doesn't necessarily mean being alone and being cut off from everything. It means reconnecting to something that is healthier, more advantageous, and that will calm and quiet that. I think you just make a great point that I don't want us to miss, because I almost missed it as you were saying it, and how important relationships and community and having others there who are able to interact with, distract us, but also speak into what we're going through, is really probably a better model than just simply being alone. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, you saying that about your and I's relationship and how we've done that and been there for each other in those moments is, yeah, I think instructive to me of the importance of that. Oftentimes is better for me than being alone, and more counterproductive and more sustainable to be in community or be in relationship with somebody who is a safe harbor from turmoil and chaos.
Yeah, the person has to be trustworthy, right? It's not just anybody
Safe. Yeah, they got to
or the
safe, right?
people.
Yeah, safe harbor.
Yeah,
Requires safety.
exactly. I think we need to emphasize that because I there is something to being alone, but I don't think we ever need to process or should process our problems or turmoil alone. Yeah, there are definitely time to tap into your introvert, get alone. But as you're processing through your turmoil, I see this all the time in pastoral counseling. Is people 90% of issues are fixed when people realize they're not alone, that they're not the only one going through what they're going through, right? And when you stay alone in that, you create this picture in your mind that just isn't true. It's just filled with lies from the enemy, and it's filled with your own lies. And so I think that in itself is just helpful to just get out of it, get out of your funk. Um, and I think we are also, if you believe we're created in the image of God, God is three in one. God is, a Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God is community, and so, and He obviously created us for community with Him, and so it's in us as a human. I mean, to be your true self is to be in community of some sort, and so I think it's so important to who we are, the core of who we are as humans, and that's why what we're going through right now in our culture is so traumatic. I think is because it we're uprooting community. Our culture, the American Trumpism is uprooting so many communities and so much dividing so many communities. And it's really those of us that value biblical community and love and care for neighbor. It's really, really destroying our souls and disheartening to see. That's where I'm at. To be honest with you, it's just and then to see people not caring about their broader community, posting online supposed pastors that they want God to strike people down dead because of their religious background.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, there are a few assholes out there. Let's be honest. There are a few, pastors. There are a few non-pastors. There are people out there who I think truly are, their hearts have been so hardened, their souls have been so dark, and they have so drunk from toxicity for so long that I won't say that they are irredeemable, but the work of redemption probably will take the miraculous work of redemption from God alone, in order to get there. Like you're not gonna be able to get there with them, probably. But I think that
Yeah.
most people who I see, this is my hope, spewing, the negative, the false narratives, truly harming other people through what they say, what they're voting for, what they're defending now. Um, I want to believe that so much of that in most people is a defense mechanism, because admitting that what they have said or where they have stood or what they have done has truly caused harm, that they are not yet in a place to self-reflect and admit that. And I don't
Mm.
think that most people who support Trump now supported Trump in the beginning because they truly wanted to harm people in the way that people are being harmed. I don't think that most people, with the name evangelical or Christian or MAGA Republican, that wasn't the heart of why they began this journey that has landed them now where they are. But kind of emperor has no clothes. They're crossed a threshold, crossed a line where, at some point or other, they began to question whether or not the person who they were following or supporting or the things that they were voting for or doing and saying were completely 100% true and helpful and Christ centered. And rather than face those things and potentially have to eat words or ask for forgiveness or do a repent, a change, they push those things down and said, "No, I'm going to continue on this path that I'm on." And then they found a reason, to do that. Well, it's about abortion, it's about babies, or it's about, you know, kids who are getting their dicks chopped off, or breasts. That, like, you found the one thing that allowed you to continue to be an asshole in the other 99. And Jesus is like, I'm not sure you see what's going on here. This is not okay. The balances are off. You're totally and utterly not in any way, shape, or form in any Christ-like position. And the things that you're doing, saying, are the people that you're supporting. And what the heck? Do some
Yeah.
self-reflection. And this is, I think, what, for me, as I'm listening to you walk us through the importance and the power and the necessity of disconnection and finding community. And what you're really encouraging us to do is to create space where we can really step back from the path and the journey that we're on, to step out of that, off the side of the road, and just stand for a moment and say, am I headed in the direction I need to go? And
Hmm.
most of us don't do that. We just keep walking.
Yeah, and unfortunately, probably people will start backing off when it's a little bit too late. When it's already affected
Too much damage is done.
people they love. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I mean,
I
we're
think,
seeing that right now, right? Not everybody who voted for Trump, not everybody who is MAGA is openly or publicly questioning, their vote. But you're seeing it everywhere. A lot of people are, and it's like the damage is done. The people who aren't illegal are or have been deported. They're not coming back. You've uprooted and split up families. Tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of government people who served you and served you well, are now out of jobs.
yeah,
Their families are now, like, what it just.
and most of them are Trump supporters. Uh, Most government workers voted the way of Trump, which is fascinating, and they're the ones practically suffering the most right now, outside of the immigration issues. Um, so yeah,
No one is exempt.
yeah, it's
In a storm,
because
in a hurricane, in a tornado, no one is exempt.
I mean Trump is a narcissist, and I can't believe people don't well stopped admitting that, because I think everybody would agree with that back in 2014 when he was just a celebrity show, Celebrity Apprentice or whatever show host, and then he's still the same guy. He still only cares about himself. So if you want to know what Trump's going to do, look at his investments, look at his bottom line, and that's exactly what he's doing. He gives his supporters, his base, these little things like, oh, genders will be now referred to as male and female, and gets them all excited, right? And then what he really wants to do is he's cutting all these staff so he can give himself and his other rich friends tax cuts and tax benefits.
Yeah,
You
we
you
see
can
that in the
easily see
budget
the
right
math.
now.
Yeah, you can see that in the math, and it's like, his support of Russia has really nothing to do, I don't think, with any. I don't think there's really any conspiracy theory about him in Putin's pocket, other than he wants to build luxury resorts in Russia, and he wants Putin to allow his son Kushner to do that. And so that's what he's doing. That's what he cares about. And so just follow Trump's businesses, follow his investments and his money. And my buddy said this recently. He said, if unless you can invest at the way Trump does, at the rate he does, you're screwed under his administration. And it's so true. I mean, unless you're a 100 millionaire, you're not going to be able to keep up and benefit from him. And by the time people realize what's happening, it's going to be,
It's too late. Yeah,
yeah,
it's far too late. And you know, it's not Trump's fault. It's you know, we've met the enemy, and he is us. You know, it is Trump is a creation of, by and large, is Christianity, which put him in office twice and created the cultural environment within the Republican Party that saw him as a messiah. Like it's our fault.
yeah. And we bought the con, like, oh, he's going to help me with my groceries, and and this
On day one, the
and
price
this
of eggs will go down.
and
I
this
mean,
yeah. Well, this stimulus check that he wants to give because of all the Doge savings is like another one of those things where he knows people are going to be like, "Look, Trump gave us $5,000 each, and isn't he a good guy?" And meanwhile, Trump's just stabbing you in the back over and over. Here's $5,000, you sucker. People don't see that. They will not see it. They're just gonna. Oh, he's a con man at its finest.
yeah, and there will. I don't think the U.S. will recover, especially when we look at like globalism and look at, you know,
Yeah.
the national, international politics. America has become self-focused, has become a narcissist, and Trump is both the result and the catalyst, you know, for that happening. Uh, you know, the director, I don't know if you saw this clip, but at this Principles First convention that was going on opposite of CPAC, the director of MI6, or retired director of MI6 in Britain was talking about this, and you know, he made a statement kind of along the lines of what you said. He said, you know, the globalism is at an end. You know, cooperation is at an end among countries, where countries work together for the good of each other and the world. We're now seeing essentially internationally the next iteration of international politics and leadership won't be globalism that has been mandated essentially by the United States being the 800-pound gorilla since World War II, and kind of mandating it by force that everybody work together on behalf of good through NATO and other, you know, UN and other things for the good of everyone. What we're seeing now is something that is more like Putin and Mao and whoever's in China now, and uh, North Korea, where powerful men decide the direction internationally through the use and abuse of power and coercion. It's the end of globalism, and it's now the Make America Great Again. It's exceptionalism and narcissism driven by whoever has the most money and the most power on a global stage. And I think America, right now, Trump is kind of proving that as he gives our closest allies the middle finger, saying we're going to annex, you know, them to the north. We're going to reject um, involvement or support of them in Europe and protection of them, and side with dictators against everybody else in the UN. It's just it's an,
Yeah.
it's it's a new era, and I don't think that era ends with Trump, unfortunately, because I think it's embedded now in who we are as Americans. We may be able to redeem and walk back some of it, but it isn't looking good for that unless we as a people change, and we as a people don't change until we as humans and we as Christians who cause so much of this change.
Yeah. I mean, you think about how we got to the point where we were trying to help the rest of the world was World War II, right? We learned from our mistakes that we tried to isolate from the world, and we realized that you can't do that if you want peace and all of those things. And so now we're kind of going back to where we were before World War II, and it seems like we might be Germany this time. And unfortunately. And um,
I fear so.
yeah, so yeah, it's scary. More turmoil is coming, which is why I think it's important to have good routines, good rhythms in your life, good boundaries to deal with it. Um, you know, we have the news segment on this pod, and I mean, the news is just Trump. I mean, you brought up a lot of it. I think another one that I see out there, and my buddy, a local pastor I've gotten to be friends with, is really involved. Was really involved with the immigration issue, refugees. Had started small, but over time built a lot of trust with the State Department. And this past year was given, well, over the last year, so about 18 months, um, was given about $16 million from the U.S. government to resettle refugees from all over the world, mostly Afghanistan, um, but all sorts of different countries throughout the world. And so he hired a staff, right, to be able to do that, like a lot of social workers. So that what they do is they, help people get jobs. They get them apartments. They have kind of what we would naturally think is like a halfway house that they fund, and then eventually, when these families get jobs, they get their own apartments and they move on. So it's a holistic program, and so there's a lot of different um, specialized skills and workers you need to help. And so he was just cut off, and he had 200 staff people through this program that he's running in the state of New Jersey, and he had to lay off nearly half of them within a couple weeks because their payroll funds were not, coming from the State Department any longer, and had to go into scramble mode, fundraise mode, and so I've seen him firsthand, just what he's dealing with decisions that Trump made, and in hearing Christians, as he's posting and I'm resharing these bits and pieces that he's writing about, telling me that he's a liar, he doesn't know what he's talking about, that he's full of it, that he's part of the problem. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like Trumpers, and these are Christians, some are pastors. I've had to block a couple pastors who were coming at me over this
Wow.
particular thing. Um, and and so I just don't. It's just very disheartening to see people just get so sucked into this Trumpism, um, and it's very very sad.
Yeah, I think this is the danger, right? But what is it our parents said? Be careful who your friends are. They'll have an effect. They'll change you. You won't change them. And I think a lot of us have awoken to the fact that a lot of things that we were pursuing and a lot of people that we idolized we were pursuing for the wrong reasons, and we were idolizing them for reasons that were anti-Christ. And now we've come to this point where we now have become what we hated, and so many of us, uh, not only are we on the wrong side of history in a lot of ways, but we're on the wrong side of the kingdom of God. Jesus would be shouting those woes at us that he gave, in the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain. We've so disconnected ourselves from the heart of Jesus and the commands and what it means to truly love each other. We've justified sin. We've become no better. We've become no better than the people who were the worst actors in Scripture, and in many ways, I think, compelling ways, may actually be far worse than they are. It's hard to imagine pastors and people who know the Scriptures pushing against your friend doing legally and also morally and ethically what he is allowed to do and been called to do. Um, it just
Here's the thing: is a lot of these Afghani refugees are refugees because they helped American
because of
soldiers.
us, yeah, absolutely, it's
Us.
our fault, and now we're rejecting them. The same thing, with
And
Ukraine. We promised we would defend and protect Ukraine if they would stop developing nuclear weapons. That we would protect them, and now we're going
yeah.
back on our word. And You're right. It's unconscionable. It's unacceptable. It's deplorable. And the fact that Christians are supporting these kinds of things, and using their faith as leverage to do it is shitty
Hmm.
at best.
It is antichrist. It's not Christian. Son of God. Um, there's still a large contingent of pastors that
You can't
hate
serve
it
two
when we say
masters, and
I hate it when
they're
we say
serving kingdom
stuff.
of man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they
Jesus
hate
drew
it. They hate
line.
it because of the guilt, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they hate it because
Jesus
uh,
drew lines in the sand all the time. So I'm not even sure what they're referencing that, you know, you can't say anything.
you should be a uniter, not a divider.
I mean,
Tell
Jesus
that
was
to
killed.
literally every single prophet, priest, and pastor in Scripture. You, this
I
is.
mean, as much as I don't like the Christian nationalist guys, at least I can respect them because they've taken a stand. And
I'd rather you be
they
hot or
call it,
cold, right, than lukewarm.
yeah, exactly. Like they call out that kind of crap too all the time. When they do that, I kind of agree with them. Um, yeah, I think people got to make a stand. I mean, I think entering into the fray a bit is important. I think that I mean we say this almost every time since Trump got inaugurated. Like you got to step up and start saying something.
Yeah, we don't
Use
want
your
this to be a
voice.
Christian nation. I mean, some of you may, but I don't think I don't want this to be a Christian nation, but I want this to be a nation that treats other people with Christian values, respect, dignity, honesty, trust, rather than oppressing the marginalized and people who are not hetero white males. This isn't just coming for
Well, that
immigrants and trans kids. This is coming for the entire LGBTQ community. It's coming for all people of color. It's already women
yeah
are being devout. People, how you vote. Whether you're woke or liberal, like it's coming for everybody. And even though hetero white males are not safe because y'all are the primary ones who are losing your jobs right now in the Fed, so you're not even safe. It's coming for you.
yeah well yeah that I mean just the basic human element that you mentioned, but also just to speak out and show people what it is to actually be Christian. Because I get disheartened people thinking that this is actually Christian. It's 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 not Christian.
No,
It's
but
not.
it would be hard to blame people who argue that this is Christianity's fault. It would be hard to argue and say they were wrong. Uh,
Well, yeah,
but
well
it's
that
not.
yeah,
It's not
exactly.
Christian.
Exactly my point, which is,
It's not
yes,
of Christ. It's not of those
it's
who
not
are
of
truly
Christ,
on the way of Christ, though it may be Christian, I guess.
or
I
the
I,
church
I, I
is
hate scare
is
quotes,
the
but
yeah,
I think
the
they put
church.
Christian in quotes there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like, when Islam was dealing with all the terrorist stuff, a lot of Islamic leaders and rabbis or whatever they're called, sorry, uh,
Imams.
we're like imams, yeah, we're like, this is not Islam, right? This is not what Allah has called us to do, and many of us, didn't believe them, but it is true. I mean, I think that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with like, yes, it's Christian, but no, this is not Christianity from the scriptures and the way Jesus called us to. Um, and that's infuriating to me and very frustrating. And yeah, Jesus drew lines in the sand over that stuff all the time. Almost every sermon or story and parable he gave was drawing a line in the sand. So I don't know why people would think that Jesus had some amazing third way where nobody was mad. I mean, he was crucified for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think what do I hear whenever people say those things? What I hear whenever people say those things is I'm making you uncomfortable. It's not that I'm dividing people, because if I were saying things that you agreed with, you would be more than happy, for me to divide people who you disagree with away from you and use God to do it. What's actually going on here is this is uncomfortable for you, and you should probably therapist here. I've had this said to me a lot. You might want to do a little self reflection on that. Kevin, you might want to do a little self reflection on that, and how dig a little bit and see why you're having that emotional response. You know, why you're being triggered, why that blood pressure is going up, and why you're feeling the need to push back here, because there's something within you, not within that person. There's something within you that is causing that response, and you might want to grab a mirror a little bit and do a little bit of self reflection on why that is.
That's a
Now,
good
having
point.
done that, I'm perfect, and nothing I say is out of line or out of order. But in the past, old Kevin 1.0,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I like Kevin
that that
2.0, 10.0,
that brings
200.0.
it. I mean, obviously, we're not. No one's perfect, and we've changed over the years. But I think when you enter into the presence of God, you can self reflect. What you just were preaching to yourself about is that when you take those times, I mean, I self reflect all the time and process and how can I do this better and bring it to God. And so I think when you have those moments, you can course correct a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we all need to kind of be that way, like open handed and have that posture.
People sometimes who do normally disagree with me will say, you know, I disagree with you on most things, but on this one, you know, I agree with you. I disagree with myself a lot of times.
Yeah.
This isn't about being right or wrong. This is about having the capacity to admit that you can be wrong, you know, and to
Yeah.
be able to openly admit that, you know.
Well, and you and I are verbal processors too. So sometimes we say things just to see how it lands. And then we're like, well, maybe that's not exactly
Maybe
right,
I don't agree with what I just said.
Yeah, maybe you're right. uh, yeah. Which is another useful tool of social media is for the verbal processors out there to get it out and for others to see a voice maybe that they're holding inside to like see something we write or say here and they're like, yeah, no, they feel like no one's saying it. So uh, for all those reasons, I think it's important to engage in what is now like our kind of town halls in this culture
Mm-hmm.
is online media, and so it's important to have a voice there, no matter how little or big you think your voice is. It's important that you weigh in on these things, and I'm always encouraged when I see people weighing in, and I love it when people weigh in their own way. You don't have to be Kevin and or Matt or
It's probably better that you aren't actually.
yeah,
Be
just kind of be yourself with it,
be something different. Be you.
and it'll be good. It'll be fine. You'll be okay.
There's no joy or peace in in mimicking my voice. Trust me.
Yeah, but you do it your way, which is a great way, and but only you could do it that way, right? So yeah, got to do it your way. Good stuff. I think it's now time to
All right, you ready?
head to the
All
next
right,
segment.
head to the after show and take some self assessment. All right, here we go. All right, well, welcome
Let's
to the after show where Matt and I take a couple of moments to focus specifically on physical fitness and how we're doing and what's going on. I gotta admit, Matt, whenever your face popped up on the screen at the very beginning of this podcast, like it did, like it caught my breath, man. Like I haven't seen you in 2 weeks, but even just the difference in 2 weeks is pretty astounding, man. Like your face, I wish I had a side by side shot of you from like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like the difference in your face is pretty darn astounding. So I'm assuming it's been a couple of good weeks for you.
yeah. I kind of hit the weight loss part of the show. So yeah, in the last 2 weeks, I've probably lost a little over 10 pounds. So I'm down 30 pounds overall.
That's
I stepped on the scale this morning so I could report for
insane.
this. Um,
So 30 pounds
so
over.
since January 1st,
Okay,
so about 2 months.
that's
Yeah.
impressive.
Um, and probably a little over, yeah, probably close to 20 pounds of it. It's been in the last kind of 6 weeks. I mean, the first, so I kind of hit the wall for a couple weeks and then broken through it, and now I'm approaching another wall, but I feel pretty good. Um, and yeah, like we were texting about this. I think it's hard to start when you haven't done it for so long. Like I've had a lot of starts and stops over the last couple of years. But then once you get it going and a good routine and good rhythm, it becomes easier and easier, to be honest with you. And I'm kind of at the point now where I don't really even crave much of the crappy foods.
It does. It's amazing. It only
Um,
takes a few weeks
yeah.
really to get into a rhythm. And once you start seeing and other people start, giving positive reinforcement, it becomes a lot easier. And then you're right. It's this weird thing where your body shifts whenever you cut that stuff out. And it's like, you don't even crave it anymore. Like, you don't want it, which is really weird. That it's like almost a like physical negative reaction. So yeah,
Yeah.
it
But it
does
is
get a
hard.
lot easier once you get to that stage. It gets
Yeah.
simpler to continue on that
But it is
change.
hard to get through that first little bit. I mean,
That's why most
most
people
people,
don't, right? Yeah,
yeah.
it is. It's
It,
not.
it,
It's not simple. It's a mind.
so,
It's a
yeah,
fight. It really is.
it
Like it's
is.
war.
Yeah. Um, Again, we were talking about community. For that, it's good to have community and a
So when's
coach. We both have coaches to help us.
we do? Yeah,
So
my coach is always positive. The last few like since January, the last couple of weeks have been really well, but up until from January 1st up until middle of February, my poor coach. I was like, sorry, I can't check in this week. Sorry, I didn't get on the scale. Yeah, sorry, I know the weight is going up, but yeah, and it's so fortunately he's very understanding and easygoing. But so okay, when's your show?
April 19th, the Saturday
Okay.
before Easter, actually.
Oh, so then you've got 9 or so weeks, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, until
I
you
have
get
a
there, just over
goal.
2 months.
Yeah, I'd like to do another 30 pounds before then. I think
Yeah, I
it's
was going to
doable.
ask what the goal was. That's aggressive but
Yeah,
doable. Absolutely.
yeah. We'll see. But
Especially if you cut out any joy for the next
I
nine
know. Well,
weeks.
yeah,
What am I
yeah,
giving up for Lent? I'm giving up joy.
yeah, yeah.
That's that.
Yeah,
Yeah. I,
yeah. She's yeah. I mean, it's similar to your plan. Like the closer we get, less and less carbs, less and less fun foods. Like I just made a bunch of burritos. I mean, I used a healthy wrap, the healthier at wraps, but still it has carbs and it's and this I made a sauce. I made my own sauce, but it still had carbs in it. So, but it was a good macro burrito. But the
right.
closer I get, the less of that carb side I'm going to be able to have.
Yeah. So she's
So,
gonna she's gonna cut it all out there as you get to the very end. Huh? So she's gonna do a real
yeah,
eating.
I
Give
went
you
away
give you
this
your
weekend.
best give you your best shape there. Right in that narrow window.
Yeah, I went away this weekend and for like a church retreat, and I asked her like some tips on traveling or whatever, and she said, "Good luck," and she laughed. She's like, "Just look for the vegetables. Just look for the vegetables and any lean meats. And if you're out to dinner somewhere, pick the steak." So I did, but I thought it was funny how she laughed. She's
Not the
like, "Good
ribeye
luck."
steak.
Yeah, good luck. Uh,
Um,
but
yeah, the last couple of weeks, I've lost a couple of pounds every week, which is good because up until the last couple of weeks, I've been putting on a couple of pounds every week,
there you go.
and it wasn't muscle because I'm still in PT and in recovery from this darn surgery back in
Yeah, yeah.
November. I'm finally now like jumping in PT, which is good. I'm finally back on a treadmill and power walking. I think I might be jogging within. I probably
Oh
could
wow.
jog right now
Okay.
if I wanted to, but the PT has not yet released me to jog. So I'm getting there.
Nice.
Strength is finally starting to come back. I'm starting to add weight now to lifts rather than pulling weight off, which is good. So things are going well in that regard. But it's just like
This
you
is a
know,
long road, man.
it has. Oh, It's been awful, but it was like turned a corner about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and just finally started to make progress and healing, where it just was in the sand. So I'm very grateful for that, because I finally feel myself starting to come back. I'm not feeling as depressed. I'm able to do more, to walk more, to do more in that regard. So I feel like I can, work off some of the weight that I've put on while I've been going through all of this. But all that to say, my coach gives a very regimented eating plan. Eat this much rice, eat this much fish, eat this much chicken, eat this much of this vegetables, and maps it all out for the entire day, which I appreciate. Occasionally, I'll deviate from, or substitute things in if I'm like not able to cook or meal prep. But so I'm like, I'm probably about 15 or 20 pounds above the weight I would like to be at just normally. And I'm still probably like 30 pounds above where I was, and probably 40 pounds above where I really should be when I get on stage. So, there you go. But so, I'm still like 20 pounds away from where I'd really like to be at this point. Well, my coach in his email to me this week was like, things are looking pretty good. We'll probably start to add some carbs back in. I was like, I know that carbs aren't a dirty word, but like I'm trying to cut things out. And he's like,
Yeah.
it might be time to add some carbs back in to fuel that fire. And I was like, okay, here we go again. I recognize I don't get it. You know what's going on, but it's always scary to add food and to add carbs
Yeah.
back in when you're like, I've got to get the weight off. This is why it's such a good idea to have somebody who knows what they're doing and who's
Yeah.
watching it, rather than me doing it, because it would never be done the healthy way if I were doing it on my own.
Yeah, coaches are good for that. They give you that comfort. They're like that comforted blanket. Uh, when you're taking those steps. Uh, so yeah, it's good.
I
But
just
you'll
said,
get
as
there.
long as
You'll
long
get
as I
there.
look okay without a shirt off by the time warm weather is here, I'm happy.
Yeah, well, that's the
That's all
key.
that's all that matters,
And then,
right?
and then if you don't, just strut around like you do. Who cares?
Yeah,
We're 40
exactly.
year old men.
He's
We're 40 year
he's
old men.
We're a 40-year-old man. That's right. And even on my worst day, at my worst weight, I still look better than 98% of other 47-year-old men, I guess. But it's not good
Yeah.
enough, Matt. It's not good enough.
No, I know. It's never good enough.
It's never
We'll
good
never
enough.
we'll never arrive until we do arrive.
I guess that's good. That way I don't stop and just settle.
Yeah.
All right, well, man, it was good to talk to you this week.
Yeah. Good to be on.
All right, see you next week, man. Take
Yep.
care.
Yep.